While you are worried about the price of your next car, two of the world's closest allies just fought a hidden economic war. And the real enemy? They're not even at the table. Okay, so here's what happened. In April 2025, President Trump did something that shocked America's closest allies. He declared a national emergency, not over war, not over terrorism, over trade deficits. And he slapped tariffs on almost everyone, 10% baseline, but for some countries with the biggest trade gaps, way more. Japan, one of America's most loyal allies for 80 years, faced a potential 25% tariff. Japan's prime minister called it disappointing, but that's diplomatic speak for what the hell, America. But here's the thing most people missed. This isn't really about Japan. This is about someone else entirely. First, let's talk about what tariffs actually are, because this matters. A tariff is basically a tax on stuff coming into your country. When Toyota ships a car to America, the American company buying it pays a tax to the US government. And who pays that tax in the end? You do. Higher prices. Economists pretty much universally agree tariffs don't work the way politicians claim. They raise prices for consumers, they rarely bring back jobs, and they usually start trade wars. In fact, most economists think the last time America went this hard on tariffs, the 1930s, it helped trigger the Great Depression. Why is Trump doing this? Well, he says it's about bringing manufacturing back to America and fixing trade deficits. Trump has called tariffs the most beautiful word in the dictionary. He thinks foreign countries are ripping us off and tariffs leveled the playing field. But when you look at what happened with Japan, there's something much bigger going on. To understand this, you need to know one thing about Japan. They are massively dependent on selling cars to America. Cars make up more than a quarter of everything Japan exports to the United States. We're talking $44 billion in 2024. Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Subaru, Nissan, their entire business models depend on the American market. So when Trump announced 25% tariffs on cars in April, then threatened 25% on all Japanese goods by August, Japanese executives panicked. And here's what's wild. Exports to the US fell 27.7% in June. But here's the twist. The number of cars they shipped, that barely dropped. Japanese companies absorbed almost all of the tariff costs themselves. They cut their prices by 20% to keep their market share. They chose to bleed profit rather than lose customers. That's desperation. So Japan is getting crushed. Their economy is heading toward a recession, and Trump knows it. So he makes them an offer. In July, they reach a deal. Tariffs drop from 25% to 15%. But here's what Japan agreed to in return. $550 billion. Japan commits to buying $8 billion a year in US agricultural goods, corn, soybeans, fertilizer. But the real money, investments. In American semiconductors, American pharmaceuticals, critical minerals, shipbuilding, AI, quantum computing. All the industries America wants to rebuild to compete with China. Japan is already the biggest foreign investor in America, but Trump just extracted a promise to pump in even more. And this is where the real story starts to emerge. While all this is happening with Japan, the US and China are in an escalating trade war. At one point, US tariffs on Chinese goods hit 145%. Chinese tariffs on American goods hit 125%. It's economic warfare. But here's what this is really about. It's not about trade deficits. It's about technology, and specifically the materials and technologies that will define the 21st century. China controls 90% of the world's rare earth processing. These are elements with weird names you've never heard of. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium. But they're in everything. Your iPhone, electric car motors, wind turbines, and critically, every single F-35 fighter jet needs 417 kilograms of rare earths. A nuclear submarine? Over 4,000 kilograms. And in 2025, China started restricting exports of these materials. It's economic leverage. This is China saying, you want to cut us out of semiconductors? Fine. We'll cut you out of the materials you need for literally everything. So Trump goes on a deal-making spree. Australia, Malaysia, Japan, everyone who has rare earths or can help build supply chains outside of China. So when Trump squeezes Japan for $550 billion, he's not just asking for money, he's asking Japan to pick a side. But here's who actually pays for all of this. Studies estimate the average household is paying $2,000 to $4,000 more per year because of tariffs. And contrary to Trump's promises, tariffs haven't brought back manufacturing jobs. A study by MIT, Harvard, and the World Bank found Trump's first-term tariffs failed to restore jobs to the American heartland. Instead, they raised costs for industries that use steel and aluminum, losing 80 jobs for every one they saved in steel production. And Japan? Their economy contracted 1.8% in late 2025. They're in recession. So here's what's really happening. The world is splitting into two economic blocs. On one side, the US and its allies. On the other, China and its growing network through the Belt and Road Initiative. China leads in 57 out of 64 critical technology categories. They're building their military 5 to 6 times faster than America. Supply chains that took decades to build are being ripped apart. Countries are being forced to choose sides. The question is whether democracies can compete with China's state-directed model without becoming authoritarian themselves. Can market economies move fast enough when China can just order companies to do whatever the government wants? So the next time you see a headline about tariffs on Japan or China or anyone else, remember, it's not really about trade deficits. It's about power. It's about who controls the technologies that will dominate this century. And yeah, it's also about the price of your next car. Because when empires clash, regular people pay the bill. Thanks for watching. If this opened your eyes to what's really going on, hit subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover.